And here we go for part 3. Okay. So, a couple simple questions. How many people should we recruit? Okay. That need this. So if you're staffing planning, how many people should we recruit? And this is based on our staffing yield and hiring yield. So those ratios we need to understand, and we use those as our best data to then inform our process at this point to answer this question. 2, what resources do we need? Is this based on historic data, average number of hires typically made per recruiter, that's workload driven forecasting, or is it staffing efficiency, the total cost associated with the compensation of a newly hired employee, or some hybrid of the two, right? How much time is it going to take? Continuous recruiting can just shorten the hiring timeline, and a lot of organizations do this, just have kind of a rolling, and these are usually large organizations. But also, if you look at like the fast food industry, people are always hiring, right? They're always hiring, not stopping that, because they expect a relatively high turnover. Batch recruiting, recruiting a new applicant pool each time. When I got hired at Boise Cascade, initially this is what they did. And it was kind of a simple formula. They needed to hire 15 people. So they pulled in about 120 applicants, and then they shortlisted it. Shortlisted, it's going to sound funny. They pulled in about 120 people. From that, they winnowed it down to 60, and then they ran 4 separate assessment seminars with 15 people per seminar. And during those assessments, that's when people were scoring their points. And then eventually they got 15 to 20 people. They went and interviewed everyone, and this is how then they arranged for people's seniority, since they were all being hired at the same point, but at the same time, but it's a union job, so they have to call someone the first hire, and they have to call someone the 15th hire. So that was accomplished through. So you can see that they start with pulling in about 200 people, take it down to about 120, then take it down to about 60 to eventually determine which 15 they will actually hire. Okay. And this is a pyramid like this. So what do we know? The staffing yield pyramid, and record keeping really helps us inform. Last time we hired for this position, we had 2,000 applicants. We had 500 interview invitations. 400 people out of the 500 accepted the interviews, and note that that's not a guarantee that you say, hey, we want to interview that someone will come along, right? Some may have already found a job or become disinterested. From this, we get 100 offers, and we expect that about 75% of the people will, in fact, accept our offers, and that's how that goes down. Same thing for graduate school. When Ohio State Social Psychology program takes applicants, right? They might get 400 or 500 applicants from not just across the country, but around the world. It's a #1 ranked program, so a lot of people apply to the program. What do they eventually determine? And the number of people who will accept the offer to come to the graduate school program. And sometimes they get surprised. One cohort, the cohort after mine, they kind of got surprised. They brought 16 people to visit, right, expecting to get maybe just less than half, maybe 40% of those, and they got surprised because it was about 70% who said yes. And of course then the department has to scramble because they've made those offers, and now they have 11 incoming graduate students instead of 7. But this is why I said earlier it's good to think in terms of ranges rather than specific numbers. If we do this, what is the potential range? And I think you're a lot safer making that prediction. You could say, well, anywhere from 5 to 12 people could say yes. Are we able to handle 12? Are we able to get by with 5? So think in terms of ranges. So the staffing yield, and this is based typically on historic data, and again, why you need to be a good record keeper. Yeah. Another piece of mathematics that you're going to have to work with is your hiring timeline. And as a hiring professional, you're going to be responsible for this. Someone's going to come to you and they're going to say, hey, how long is it going to take for you to hire someone into this position in my department? And you're going to look at the job, you're going to understand the staffing ratios, etc. You're going to understand the nature of the job and how that changes the hiring process, the interview process, the testing process, the assessment process, right? So you say, okay, so we're going to solicit applications for 14 days, and then based on those applications, we're going to call people and do a telephone assessment. That's 7 days. From the telephone assessment, we're going to arrange to do interviews, right? And these interviews then are going to take place over this 7-day period. We're going to extend job offers and give people 6.5 days to respond. That is 7 days, right? And then the job offer accepted, 14 days. And then finally the beginning pre-job training. So 7 weeks total equals the lead time required. So you should have a number, and it's going to change for the nature of the position, but you should be able to tell a you should be able to tell a manager. They say, hey, we need 3 people for this position, and you say, wow, in the past it takes us about 12 weeks, 7 weeks, whatever it is, to find people and eventually get them to accept offers for that position. To best meet the needs of your internal customers. And remember, as an HR professional, one of your internal customers is the manager requesting employees. You also need to be able to calculate the external cost of per hire. So the external cost per hire, 6 basic elements. Add it to 90%, so if you can get these 6 elements, you got 90% estimate is pretty good. What are the advertising expenses, or the agency and search firm fees, the employee referral bonuses, recruiter and applicant travel costs, relocation costs, company recruiter costs, right? So, Saratoga Institute adds an additional 10% to cover miscellaneous expenses including testing, reference checking, hiring manager time, and administrative support. And those are things we often don't consider. That there's going to be people in administrative positions that are going to be sending out letters, making phone calls, scheduling appointments. Their time is money, just like everyone else's. If we're going to use various assessments and purchase those assessments from outside vendors, that's a cost that we have to consider as well. This is something that you'll have to be able to calculate so that you can create budgets for your department. Now, internal cost per hire. Probably less overall, right? Internal advertising costs, so you advertise within the company website, somehow transmitting that maybe their intranet, if you will. Travel and interview costs, that is, are we going to open the position, and do we have multiple facilities across the nation, across the world? What might be the travel and interview costs? Sometimes there's relocation costs. When I went from Boise Cascade, Salem to Boise Cascade, Wallula, Washington, right? I negotiated a deal that they would pay my moving expenses. So that means they got to pay for a moving van and the people to put the stuff in the moving van and take me to my new place, etc. So relocation costs can add up pretty quickly. And internal recruiter costs, notice this is probably much lower than it would be with external recruiting. Now, geographic targeting, okay? Can focus on sourcing recruits based on where they live, can focus on the local labor market, and for lower level positions, right, that's maybe where you want to go. Focus on the labor markets and locations similar to the organization's location in terms of can target individuals likely to find the firm's location attractive. And of course, that can be problematic in itself, right? Moving to Wallula, Washington was not at the top of anyone's hit parade. Right. If you like the high desert in eastern Washington, then it might be attractive to you, but most people are not going to find that attractive. To hire mill workers into that organization, not too problematic, but if you want to hire, let's say, a human resources manager into that location, there's a lot of other places they could live. Why Wallula, right? So that might be difficult. Now, lower level positions in the organization, they're filled from the local labor market, and the geographic boundaries tend to widen as the position moves up the organization's hierarchy. So the higher the level of the position, probably the wider the net we're going to cast. Why do so many organizations want to relocate or expand in Columbus? Let's face it, Columbus is kind of the beacon in the Midwest, right? If you want to look at what cities in the Midwest are growing and where property values are going up and where shit is happening, Columbus, Ohio has kind of got it, you know, so it makes it more attractive, right? It's easy for Ohio State to recruit to Ohio State because Ohio State, Columbus, Ohio is relatively attractive. Now, that being said, it's not San Francisco or it's not Los Angeles. and you know, especially the West Coast. There's a reason there's 40-some million people in California, because it's a great place to live in a lot of respects, especially in terms of weather. When my dad came out here during World War II, came out here, he left Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania to go to Santa Ana, California to be in the Army Air Corps Band. It didn't take him 2 years of living in Santa Ana to tell his family back in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, y'all got to move out here. You can't live in Pennsylvania anymore. That's just ridiculous back there. Come move out here in the land of sunshine, right? And that's about it for this. I'm hoping that between this and the 2.31 and 2.3, it should give you a lot to think about for your current activities. We'll call it good for today, and I would assume that this is about, time-wise, should be completed by the end of this week, I guess, as far as watching these videos, etc. So I will put that due date on the assignment section. You guys have a good day, and take care of yourselves.